My image of gay in Kenya was white men. I remember thinking this was something for expatriates, he says. But when he returned home to work in healthcare in rural Kenya, he found men like himself there, as well as in what were known as tea rooms, public toilets in Nairobi. As these men had never left Kenya, had no contact with white people whatsoever, it dawned on him that it wasn't foreign influences that had dictated his attraction. It was simply who he was. Hello everybody, I'm Noria and this is my first video on YouTube. Okay, not really first. I took an investigative journalism course in uni and I had to do some investigative journalism and let's just say it was awful. I didn't do well. Okay, I passed the class, but that was because I had like a written exam and I just knew that I had to pass it because there was no way I was getting good grades with that video. Nope. And after I did that, I was like, okay, I'm never again going to YouTube ever. So yes, that's me. I'm Nori. I read and I'm a quitter, which might not be the best thing to start this video with, but whatever, we'll roll with it. So this is my first booktube video, and I want to review Lives of Great Men by Chike Frankie Edozien. Firstly, I would like to say that I love this book. I think it's needed. I think it's amazing that we have stories detailing lives of gay and queer people in Africa, because the narrative we usually get is that, oh, there are no gay people in Africa, or if they're gay it's because they were influenced by foreign society. And I think it's refreshing to realize that, you know what, from Ghana to Nigeria to Uganda to South Africa to Kenya, there have always been gay people. I love the fact that you could tell that Frankie did enough research. You could tell that this was a topic that was close to his heart. He is a gay man after all. And you could also tell that he is a rich, fairly comfortable, slightly privileged gay man. Which I'll get to later in my review. I think it's a story that is needed. The writing was clean, straightforward. He painted some vivid pictures, but he also knew how to drill neatly to the bare bones of what he was saying, and I attribute that to the decades he spent as a reporter writing for the New York Post. You could tell that he knew how to wring out a story even from the most reluctant of persons, and which made this story a joy to read, because a lot of the people he met were people willing to tell their stories. Now, I know with all I've said, the assumption might be that, oh, okay, this is just a collection of like different stories from different people. No, this is a memoir. Lives of Great Men is Chike Frankie Edozien's memoir. It details his life from childhood days and when he was discovering his sexuality, to when he had to leave home, to when he moved to the UK, and then shortly after that the US, how he put himself through school. It gives us a greater insight into this amazing man. But I guess that is where, as much as I love the book, that is where I started having questions. Frankie himself admitted in the book that he grew up in a upper middle class family. He lived in Ikoyi. For people not living in Nigeria, Ikoyi is in Lagos State and is one of the posh, bougie areas in Lagos. During colonial times, a lot of affluent white people lived in Ikoyi. You could tell it still has that old money colonialist feel. Some of those houses had been built like 50, 60 years ago, and they look it's the way some homes look, old and Victorian, but with that regality that a lot of newer houses don't have anymore. Those are the kind of homes that you say that, oh, those homes have good bones. He lived in a house like that. Yes, he did admit that he eventually moved to like a duplex because some annoying government official saw the house and was like, that house I wanted. And yes, unfortunately, I read that part and I was like, definitely happens to today. So yeah, you could tell he had a upper middle class life, and as such his experiences were kind of bougie, because when you lived in that kind of surrounding, it's only logical that your friend also fall within that socioeconomic group as you do. It's only logical that you get the opportunity to travel, to see the world, etc. And although I do admit though that he had hard times because his parents separated and his father stopped paying his fees. So eventually he decided to just leave his father's home and make a life for himself away from any association with his family. So he traveled to the UK, stayed with his mom's sister for a while, and then moved to the US where he did all sorts of jobs just to raise money to feed himself, clothe himself, and put himself through school until he was done. Then he got his job, started writing as a reporter, worked his way up. But yeah, pretty awesome. So I like this book. I would have loved this book, but as it seems to be the modus operandi for a lot of gay men, especially gay African men, um, where are the queer women? That's my question. It's sad because I've already talked about the fact that based on the kind of family, it's understandable that, not understandable, but I could see how it was that in his earliest stories, a lot of the people he was meeting were people that were also fairly comfortable, also in good socioeconomic straits like himself. And then when he traveled, eventually when he came back as an expatriate, he lived that bougie life. Holidays in the most exotic locations, could travel to Accra, he could travel to this bougie ass location in Ghana where you had to like be of the elite club for you to be able to know where it exists. So that's the kind of life he lived, and you could tell that those were also primarily kind of people he met. Sure, he met the gardener and everything, but the gardener was also, he was dating people that made way more money than him. So that was how he met the gardener, because the gardener was sleeping with Lamido. Anyway, I don't want to spoil too many things, but to understand why I had that question as to where were the people, the not so privileged people, there's something one of his friends, Kainene, who he interviewed, no, not Kainene from Half of the Sun, was heartbroken. Chimamanda still won't tell us what happened to her. No, this is another Kainene from his own story. It tells us, she says, I'm sure to the outside world, it seems like, oh my God, gays in danger here. But in Lagos, we will carry on as we always have. People will get over themselves. I'm not going to be tarred and feathered and driven out of Lagos. That's not going to happen. Nobody cares. But that would be so long as I don't go on TV and say, I'm gay. But that applies to everything here. You just wear your heart on your sleeve here and you don't fly your rainbow colors out in public. I don't feel the need to hype. I don't feel the need to make a big statement either. And the part where she says, oh my God, gays are in danger here, but in Lagos we'll carry on as we always have, it struck me as, I actually legitimately wrote it here. I was like, is she not aware of her privilege? Because of course, the gays, are not in danger. You guys are bougie and rich and members of the elite. The people who have to be afraid are those who are poor. Because you see, in Africa, not just Nigeria, but in Africa, to be gay and poor is what will have death come knocking at your door. It's when you're rich, it's not always the case, but when you're poor and you're gay, then there's a big problem. So yes, that was the first thing I had a problem with. The second thing I was questioning was, like I said, the absence of women than queer women in the story. Because, like I said, it's something that I don't know, a lot of writers, especially African male writers tend to do sometimes. They tell their story, especially when they're telling their stories from the perspective of a man. They tend to forget that women are there living full, active lives, and that our population are actually more than men. So how is it that you're going to tell a story and for every 10 male friend you have, then that's one woman? It raises a lot of red flags for me, because are you saying that there aren't that many queer women who exist? Are you saying that there are no queer women living the high life? They exist. Far be it from me to say that, I am the one to decide exactly who Chike Frankie Edozien chooses as his friend, because that would be wrong. Which is the reason why I ended up amending it and saying that there's not that many, there are opportunities where it could have brought in women into the story and it didn't. Case in point, okay, so for those of you that don't know, was it Wycliffe St. John that sang Diallo, that song? Yes, exactly. Apparently, Frankie, yes, this amazing man, was the one that broke the story of Amadou Diallo. This is it Congolese? Is this immigrant from Guinea who left his very affluent family and came to America to pursue his dreams, and he was brilliant. He was doing so well. He was selling things on the side to raise money, things like electronics, etc. By the streets. And then that night, he wanted to just go out to get a drink, ran into members of the New York Police Department, and as it happened, it didn't go as well. He was unarmed, he was black, and the cops shot him several times actually. And they wanted to start painting the narrative that he was a criminal, he was this, he was that. And not only did they take the life of this man, they decided to drag him through the mud, to justify the unlawful and wrongful killing of Amadou Diallo. And Frankie decided to do an article on it because he fairly knew the guy, and he knew that was not who Amadou was. And by the time he had done his research and he had gone around, he went to Guinea, he reached out to Amadou's parents, and then they came back and then realized that, okay, no, this boy was not a thief, he was not selling, he was not doing anything illegally. Okay, he was peddling, but he wasn't doing drugs, he wasn't this riffraff that they had been painting him out to be. He was a decent man from an affluent, well-to-do family. And Frankie, he gave a human face to this boy that had become another statistic of racism and police brutality, and he wove this story into this is what is still happening in America today, with black killings and the Black Lives Matter. And he got to this part where it was like, since then the list of black men and boys who had no weapon on them but died at the hands of police officers keeps growing, including at time of writing Freddie Gray, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Laquan McDonald, Tamir Rice, Akai Gurley, and then there's an ellipsis that finishes it. It says 16 years after Amadou's death, the Black Lives Matter movement will be born at a time when cell phone cameras enable regular people to document police actions and put them in the public domain before the law enforcement can control the narrative the way they did with Amadou. And all I was thinking was that a brilliant way to tie the story together, but at the same time, what about black girls? So many names of unarmed black men that have died at the hands of police officers, but what about the women? What about Sandra Bland? What about Shalina Lies? What about Aina Stanley Jones? It just relates to the fact that black women always come through when it comes to this brutality against black bodies. Black Lives Matter movement, which he mentioned, was pushed and started by black women. So why is it that the things you were mentioning were all for men? What about the unarmed black girls that have been murdered, that have lost their lives? Why can't they say their names? Why do we go mute when it's time to also champion them? Why is it that when there's a killing of a young black boy or black man, we all come through, we all shouting Black Lives Matter too? Why is it that when it comes to the girls, it's silent? It's unfair, it makes no sense. And I wondered if he has this consistent, if it's a disregard for women is pushing him to make the statement, or if he didn't even know, if he's not even aware of it. Because it comes to another part in the book where he tells us that, okay, see, the thing about an African society is that polygamy is a thing. Some men have multiple wives. They have 2, 3, 4, depends. Especially in Nigeria. Yes, so it's not uncommon to see someone who says that, oh, I grew up in a polygamous home. So, like I said, it's a thing. And as much as polygamy is a thing, a lot of Nigerian men still think it's perfectly fine for them to find love outside their marriage. It's a thing. That is also a thing. The rampant cheating that goes on in marriages in the country. And Frankie Edozien mentions that he goes, monogamy is admirable in its way, but I now believe equating monogamy with happiness in relationships is purely a Western construct, and that these wonderful men can't and shouldn't conform to that unless it has been agreed to by all parties. Okay, so just to explain this part, the lead into this paragraph is the fact that lots of gay African men are taken to cheating outside their marriages. They get married to women because of societal pressures, because it's a thing. It's a thing here first. In lots of countries, it's illegal for you to be gay. and then parents, your family will pressure you when they see that you're getting old and you're not married, like when are you marrying, blah 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 and everything. So it's a thing. So a lot of gay men marry women, usually unsuspecting women, and then decide to have their boyfriends, their lovers, their true love on the side. So the wife is there to fulfill all righteousness and to get society to back off. Even better if it is that you can find a way to impregnate her. So you have kids and you have a wife and then you just do your own thing outside. So that's what is leading to this paragraph. And then he says, this Western Africa is a society where even men who aren't making loads of money have 2 wives and a girlfriend. And he is right, by the way. Why should married men who have same gender love interest on the side be looked at any differently from their heterosexual friends? And I remember I got to this part. I tapped with orange, and you can see my notes. Can you see my notes? See? Yeah. And all I could think is that, boy, what are you saying? We can condemn both heterosexual and homosexual men, because say what you will, it's only the men in African society that are given the leeway to find love outside their marriages. The wives, not so much. Polygamy is definitely fine and good, but you will see people laugh if you even bring up polyandry and the fact that if a man can have 2 wives, why can't a woman have 2 husbands? It's not possible, because ultimately the sexism is so inherent. This society is so patriarchal that all women can do is hope to get married, and if they get married and they marry somebody who is cheating on them, like outside their marriages, they can wait and just let it go. The thing about it, like I said, is that we can criticize both. We can criticize heterosexual men and homosexual men, unless of course you're in a marriage. I do admit, though, it did say here that, but I now believe equating monogamy with happiness in relationship is purely a Western construct, and that these wonderful men can't and shouldn't conform to that unless it has been agreed to by all parties. Now, the only way in which I'm perfectly fine with this is if, let's say, you are in a relationship with this woman and you marry her and you let her know, okay, do you know what, I'm gay, and I am going to find love outside our marriage, and you can do the same. But 8 times out of 10, that is not how it goes. The man would find love outside his marriage with someone of the same gender, and the woman can't. And it's sad, unless of course you're both gay and you both decide to get married, which is perfectly fine, which is what I would always push for. And then you both decide that you're going to find love outside your marriages, and nobody else's business. But that's for men that marry queer women, and that is for men that actually admit to the people they're getting married to that, oh yes, I'm gay, and I'm marrying you just because society insists I can. And it just came back to me, and all I just wonder is, like, why is it that in trying to humanize the story, it went that route? Is it that I cannot see it? What is it? But all in all, yeah, other than the slightly, sexist, just a tinge of misogyny there, other than that, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more. I think I would give it like a 3.5 over 5. I hope sincerely that I write more stories, especially it keeps telling our stories to the rest of the world, to the rest of Africa, because everybody is convinced, or seems to be convinced, that, oh no, you're only gay because you've been watching too many videos and shit. It's stupid. I hope he writes more stories, hopefully with more female characters that show up and also have these glamorous, amazing lives, because the title says lives of great men, and he would be right, because it was mostly lives of great men.